to this week's edition of F20 Live. And as I just mentioned in the chat window, we're trying out a new recording method as well. I've been noticing that the playback on YouTube has been a little fuzzy. It's kind of low res, and seeing as this is supposed to be an educational series, that would be kind of nice if you could actually see what we're talking about later on. We do get a number of people on the live webinar each week, but of course we also have even more who go back and view the recordings later. So we're going to try this out and see how the recording works out this week. I'm actually recording it two different ways, so hopefully we'll get at least one of those to work out well. Usually I save Q&A to the end, but I noticed somebody found the Q&A button up in the top left corner of your screen already and was asking what I was snacking on just before we got started. So, of course, to be fair, always have the ubiquitous can of Coke Zero. I've actually contemplated at times putting a little comment in the footer of our sites that say powered by Strider and Coke Zero, because that's literally what keeps the office functioning. And then fueling up in advance of our webinar on some mini Thinsations. It's working really hard to get to 100 calories on that snack. So hopefully that's been useful for you. But moving on. Quick review. Yeah, if it's the first time you're here with us, we're going to go through a few bits of news or features and then take some Q&A. Q&A button is up in the top left corner of your screen. So you should be seeing a little ask a question button. There's a chat window as well, but sometimes if the chat starts taking off, questions can get overlooked. So I want to make sure that if you have a question for us to answer during the show, go ahead and use that button up in the corner. Hey, otherwise, feel free to use that chat window for dialogue, etc. Okay, so we're going to get started now. Screen share going. So you should, at this point, be seeing my screen, which is good. I've seen it on the preview, so I think we're in business. I've got a couple little back-end things I wanted to show you today, just little stuff that people ask about once in a while, and just kind of figure we should know and talk about a little more. And then a pretty cool new feature that we've developed. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here into my dashboard. And under the Systems and Settings link, there's a link here. It's called Bookmark Icons. This is a really simple little thing. Quite often when you're looking at a website or you bookmark it, up in the right beside the site name and the page name, there's that little icon, which is a great branding opportunity, especially if someone's bookmarking your site, and to have that not just be a generic Explorer or Chrome icon, but actually have something that's reminiscent of your branding. So I just want to show you that we can do that very easily. I'm going to click on the bookmark icons. And then here it's going to ask for the Favicon file. Now this is the only part where it gets a little tricky is here it's looking for a special file format, an icon file format, and an image that's sized at 16 by 16. So I'm going to take you through this really quickly. So this is actually pretty easy. Now pull up Photoshop. Now you don't have to use Photoshop. I use Photoshop because this is our professional outfit. I know a lot of our florists use Photoshop Elements, which is kind of a stripped down, all the basics of Photoshop feature. Really handy. But any image editor, you can do this. So I pulled up our logo artwork. And then what I do is I just crop that down to a square. We're going to wind up with a 16 by 16 square, so we need to start with the source image that's square. So I cut that down to a square. We're just going to use that little imagery from our icon. And then we take that, and we're going to go over to, now we've got that file exported. I'm going to jump over here to this handy little tool on dynamicdrive.com. Now you can go to Google and just do a quick search for Favicon generator, or you can go to tools.dynamicdrive.com/Favicon. That's Favicon. Okay, and I'm going to actually go ahead and paste that link in the chat window. So if you're on the live webinar, then you've got the link for that as well. And what this does, very simply, is ask you to pick the artwork that you're starting from. So I went and chose a file, which was our the square logo file. There's that. When I click on create icon, that will give me right there a link to download that special file. Nice and simple. Right. Download that file, then go back over to my dashboard. I would come in here, choose that file, click on upload. And just like that, we'd have that loaded in. So, real simple way to kind of improve the branding on your site. Let's move on from that to another little system setting. Well, I like to play with a little bit. Probably the most commonly used block on our site is the content block. Right? That's where you can put in bits of, you can put in your text, you can put in images, you can play with some formatting. You do a lot of stuff in there. That's one that's used quite frequently. You notice there's that editing toolbar across the top. So if I click in here on the rich text editor, this will show you some of the options that you've got. So usually when we roll out a site, we default to the office setup because that's got 4 rows of lots of things you can do. In some cases, that might be a little too much. It might be a little overwhelming for someone who's new to the platform or new to using this kind of editor. So in here, you've got options. You can roll it back to a very simple option. So it just has your copy paste. You've got some text formatting for bold, italic alignments, and keeping that really simple. There's also an advanced option that adds in a little more formatting. Right. We've got some tables going in there, additional features, and then of course the office one that we roll out that's got pretty much everything, including the kitchen sink. And if you want to have a little more fun with it, you can go custom. Now here you're basically playing with the text file settings. So that's not something you want to do lightly, but you could just copy this information, right? Highlight, copy, paste into a text file or something, keep that as a backup, and then have at it. It's pretty straightforward once you start looking at the values that are in there. I won't spend a lot of time on it because it's just a little feature, but it is something that you can use to simplify or streamline your editing experience within the site. And then anywhere that you are using that editor, you'll have your custom toolbar. And jump back now to the front end of our site. And we're going to talk about some customer-facing feature that we really haven't talked about or hyped too much lately. And that's reviews. So you can, when we first rolled out Florist 2.0, 4 or 5 years ago, these reviews were a big part of what we want to bring out. We were the first platform that actually offered consumer-generated reviews on the product page. And we found mixed levels of adoption. Some florists really liked it. A lot of florists didn't really bother to use it or promote it. Some just got frustrated because inevitably there will be spam. So it's something that we pulled back from and don't really offer as a default feature. However, with things like Panda Update and the real importance of having unique content on your product pages, including reviews is a great way to try and mix up and add some variety to the content that's on page, especially if you haven't yet changed your descriptions away from what the wire service or catalog people have already provided for you. So I'm going to roll in here and just click on this first product. Right, and you'll see that we come in here, we've got a nice little review form. Now, Google's also started picking up on reviews within their search results. So if there's reviews presented in a format that they can decipher, and that will help them as a social signal, say that this page is a little more relevant, people are interacting here. So it's good for users to see that, or for customers to see that someone else is actually interested in that product and giving some feedback on that product. It's good for search engines in that you're mixing up the content and showing that people are interested. And the review is basically very simple. You can come in here, drop a name, email address, and give it a score. Let's see, that one's 4 out of 5. There you go. And post the comment. Now this is configured quite easily. Again, this is a block that may or may not be enabled on your site at the moment. As per usual, if it's something that you want to use, just drop us a quick support ticket and make sure that that's enabled for you. I want to show you a few of the options that are in the back end here. There you go. So within this block, we've got a title. So right now it's called ratings. You can call it reviews, you can call it feedback, or you said, anything like that. Play with it. You can require moderation on the comments. So if you decide that you want to proof the comments before they go live, then you can enable that. Not as good for social interaction. People like to feel that if they're posting a comment, it's authentic, it's just going live. But that can be useful if you find that there's a lot of spam coming in or unsavory language. Hopefully you're not getting too much in the way of negative reviews, but don't be afraid of them. We'll get to that a little more later on. So you can set up moderation on the comments. Okay. You can enable comments, so that there might be some times where you want to have the comments but not accept any more. You can set the authentication. Someone might be a registered user on your site, a customer that's already made a purchase, or they've already registered for an account. Or you can just set it to just require an email address, and it'll just check to make sure it's a valid, properly formatted email address. And of course, there's the option for having a CAPTCHA on there. That's probably the best defense against spam. However, it also looks kind of ugly. So what I would suggest is if you're really worried about spam, start with the moderation. Right? At least that way you get to review them before the comments go live. If you're really having a problem with spam, then you can turn on the CAPTCHA, and that should cut down a fair bit. And of course, notifications. So you set up an email address here where you'll receive a notice every time a comment is posted. Okay. And that is added simply by going to add block, as we always do. Go down, and there's a page ratings block. Now, page ratings is actually an evolution of the reviews block, which we've had from the beginning. Page ratings is a little newer, and it just takes that functionality that we've seen and extends it a little further. I'm going to show you how that works. Okay. One of the nicer features here is that if I try to post another comment, right, because it knows that not just by email address but by user session, it knows that I've already posted a comment, it shouldn't allow another one. See, this time it stopped and it flashed an error message saying only one review from each user is allowed. So in that way, even if you get a bot or something like that that's trying to spam your page, they can only put one per page. That helps keep things under control. One of the nicer features, if we jump back to our home page and scroll down a little bit, there's also a tabulated ratings feature. So you can put this block. It doesn't have to be full width across the page. This would actually do well in a sidebar also. This shows top rated products. So you can just have this as a nice little link somewhere, this little section maybe on your home page in the sidebar, or if you've got a little area you want to fill some content. And this very quickly lets users go in and say, what are the products that people are rating the most, the highest. Right? So this one's popular. It's a 5-star. Let's go check that one out. So again, it just gives it a little more of that social proof, social element. And as I said, don't fear the bad reviews. If you have a product on your site that's getting a lot of bad reviews, be grateful that you're getting that feedback. If they're legitimate comments, then there's probably something wrong with the product or the presentation of the product. So at least take that as a learning experience and take it as an opportunity to show that you've got great customer service and you care what your people think. So I'm going to move on from there to the last feature. This one, yeah, I'm pretty happy about. We've been working on this for a while, and we call it our Uber login block. And so you'll notice just up in the top right corner here, we've got this is little welcome tab. And it says, hello, admin, because I'm logged in as the admin user. Now, if by chance I was logged in, let's see, or not logged in, if I was here visiting for the first time or hadn't logged into my account yet, I would see this. So it would say, hello, guest. And I can click here to pull down this tab. And what it's going to let me do is very quickly either sign up for a new account, log into my existing account, which will take me over to my order history, or I could choose to log in with something like a Facebook or Google account or LinkedIn or on and on and on. Now, this block we're making available free for everybody. Right? It's no extra charge for that, but there is a fair bit of setup involved because we have to start linking in with APIs from Facebook and Google and any other service that you want to activate. So there will be a small charge for the configuration of that, but that's just because we have to recoup the time and such in getting that configured. So if it's something you're interested in, again, drop us a support ticket. We can talk that over and get it set up for you. In the back end, jump over here, that the Uber login sets up like this. So we've got a whole list of the different services that we interface with. So we've got Yahoo, AOL, MySpace, Twitter, Windows Live, which again is going to be a lot more popular with the adoption of Windows 8, because Microsoft is tying together their online accounts, their Microsoft Live accounts, pulling that into Windows 8. So you log into your computer with your Windows Live account, and they've now announced they're merging that into Skype as well. So you're going to see an uptick in use of Windows Live, or for many of us using for the first time in many years. We've got some pretty stale accounts out there. And then, of course, LinkedIn, Tumblr, and Foursquare, which are other popular services, especially the LinkedIn one. Right, so getting those set, each one of those needs some setup and API configuration, but really handy way to let people connect to your site quickly. So if somebody's already logged into Facebook and comes in and just clicks on that Facebook icon, then they'll be registered or logged into your site using that Facebook information. If they already have an account and their Facebook email address matches with the email address on their account, they'll get tied in automatically to that account. So very user-friendly, nice way for them to click in quickly and just kind of increase that adoption of your account. And with that, we've got some pretty cool features coming up related to user accounts. Nothing I can speak to yet, but this is the first step in what I hope is going to be really cool new ways to kind of engage with your customers and users a little bit more. So with that, we've kind of hit the end of the agenda, the features for today, and we'll get over to Q&A. So this is my warning. If you've got a question, need to ask, go ahead and pop that in the Ask a Question box now, and I will just sit around and stare idly into the camera for a moment, waiting. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions popping in at the moment, so I'm going to assume that everybody is satisfied and eager and ready to head over to the support desk and pop in questions or requests for any of these features. Oh. Okay, Alan's disconnected for the Uber login info. Ask if I can just recap that quickly. Yeah, basically you can, if you need to get the whole rundown again, you can check the recording, but the short version is Uber login will let people log in to create accounts or log into existing accounts on your site using their social accounts. So things like Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Yahoo, AOL, Windows Live, Foursquare, Tumblr. So if they have one of those accounts, you can and quite easily get them set up. And that's going to lead to some pretty cool new features related to user accounts that are coming in future months. I'm hoping in advance of Christmas, but I don't want to make any promises we can't keep. So we're working hard on it, and we'll hope that that's ready to fire soon. Okay, and I guess the other part with the login is if you want this activated on your site, just go ahead and submit a support ticket requesting that. And there will be need to be a small charge for setup because there's a bunch of API configuration required for each service, but we can discuss that within the support ticket. And so with that, I don't see anything else coming in on the Q&A, so I'm going to call it a wrap and let you get back to selling some flowers and move on, and hope to see you next week.